This episode of Savvy and Sage podcast is sponsored by Color Street. These are 100% real nail polish strips made in the USA that don't require any dry time. Simply start with clean, dry nails, tear off the strip and gauge the proper size. Peel off the plastic front and backing and align with the base of your nail. Smooth and then file away any excess and voila, no drying needed. Today's color is Beijing Beauty. Shop my link in the description below. Welcome to Savvy and Sage podcast. Today we are talking ED-umacation. We say ED-umacation because it's something everybody needs and not everyone has. So let's jump right in. ED-umacation, from the most basic general home training, aka having good manners, to formal education, such as the kind we often get from a public school or private school. Either way, it's imperative we all have access to some kind of formal education, since often our kids are not given the best home life, and some students are even homeless. And without the protection of a brick and mortar school building, these children have absolutely no place to feel truly safe, nor do they get proper parenting, educational support, or much needed social interaction with fellow students. All of these factors reduce the chances of a good outcome and increase the chances of kids dropping out younger and younger. Because human nature, for most people, to avoid doing difficult tasks unless they are prodded or there are consequences. Let's discuss this topic further with our AI in the sky, the lovely Sage.
Hello there.
Hi, thanks for joining us. And, we're talking about school systems. Jump in on this. You have a ton of knowledge, a ton of experience. Let's just speak on this subject real quick.
Well, I taught in public schools for a number of years, and I've actually taught from pre-K through high school and even tutored in college levels. So I have a great span of experience with students of all ages. But with kids having to adapt to these new standards with COVID and online learning, and let's also remember that some schools have been on again and off again. That's a lot of transition for some students. Not all young kids are as resilient as people say they are. A lot of kids are so resilient. They are because they're young and they're growing and they're adapting to new situations. But the truth is, the more structure you have in a learning environment, the better the outcome. So anyway, if we start just with basic boundaries, I'm just going back to children being prepared for any kind of a school setting. Like, just the way schools were before we had to adapt to these new ways of teaching and learning. But kids need to learn self-control from a very young age. That helps them to manage their impulses in a different environment outside of the home. That's important to mention because it's very, very stressful even for young kids in a school environment, and now they're being expected to perform with nothing but a laptop in front of them. So if they haven't had good basic learning to begin with, it's going to be very, very much of a challenge for a parent. And frankly, there's a lot of single parents out there that are just struggling.
Absolutely.
So that's one thing.
Absolutely. And to kind of continue on with your point about parenting and with the COVID, keeping kids at home and having parents kind of taking over that role of teacher, it's a tough transition, not only for the parents and the teachers, but also from the children. A lot of these children are in situations where they're not used to having their mom and their dad or either or fill the role of a teacher in their life, and they kind of sometimes can give a little pushback when it comes to that because they want to be at home with their mom. They expect their mom to be like their mom. They don't want their mom to treat them like their teacher does at school. So that being one of the struggles, and then many more as well, when we talk about the relationship between parents and children and having to teach and train schooling from the comfort of your own home.
That's a very, very important point, and there was a period of time, even with my son, we had a tragedy in the family, and so I had to homeschool him for 2 years while I was working. And I can tell you that he did do his work, but it wasn't as good. And I'm a teacher too. It wasn't as good as he would have done in a school setting where a teacher bears more authority, frankly, because your own children, if you're they'll try to push, they'll break down, they might cry or get upset or, become a lot more emotional because you're the mother or the father and they know what they can get away with. But the teachers in a classroom, they feel differently because that teacher provides more authority,
Absolutely.
So you get better results usually when you're away from home because your home is kind of a comfort zone for these kids, and it's just really stressful parents, and sometimes it brings out the worst,
Absolutely.
And that creates a real problem. Another problem is where do you find a quiet space to set everything up for learning? I have 2 granddaughters, and they're having their own issues with learning online because sometimes there's younger children in the house, running around, and there's just a lot more distraction, of course, like that. So my heart goes out to parents and kids and teachers. So anyway, as I'm going to sort of fast forward to comparing in-person learning to learning online, because that is a choice now. And I know some parents who have chosen, even when they've been given the choice of in-person learning, initially they didn't like it, and then later, because the school had demanded that, then they now I have a friend that is teaching 2 students that are in middle and elementary school, and she decided she prefers it because she is now able to work at home.
Right.
So, there's just so many variations happening.
And to that point,
I just hated the whole idea.
I was just going to say to that. Yeah, I was just going to say to that point. Let's make a small transition on talking about from parenting to teaching. When it comes to the teachers, one of the things that has really had a huge impact is teachers not feeling safe in the classroom. And because of that, a lot of teachers have decided to take retirement early, or they have simply just quit the job due to the fact that they are feeling unsafe. Let's talk a little bit about that, because spikes in virus infections and exposures are, really forcing a lot of teachers to basically call it quits when it comes to this industry. And it makes for a giant gap and a giant need for teachers right now in all across various communities.
Exactly. They are retiring. A teacher can retire, and of course, I know these facts and figures, but they can retire at 59 and a half if they want to, and still get, their teacher retirement pulled out in one lump sum, or however way they want to get paid. But you can officially retire at 59 and a half. And some teachers who would have wanted to go on, into their late 60s, they are deciding not to do that because it's just too much stress. It's too much stress, first of all. The mode of teaching, whether they are in person, even if they're in person, they still have to try to keep the masks on the students. And you and I both know that no kids want to put a mask on. They might come into the classroom like that, but they feel that they're immortal. Kids just have that sense that, oh, we're gonna live forever, we'll never get hurt. So just think about the amount of time they're spending just from the discipline level. But anyway, that's another issue.
Yeah.
But you're right. A lot of teachers, especially the older teachers that are already in their 60s and just love teaching. I loved teaching. I loved it. But I did retire early. But that was before this COVID.
Yeah.
Because I had other projects, in line that I wanted to pursue. But with all of this, it's like an albatross over you. With all these demands, it just it sets up a different platform from which to teach from, and it's overwhelming.
Hmm.
I have a personal friend here where I live who worked for me during the summer, and she began teaching her first year. You know who I'm talking about. This was her first year to teach,
Hmm.
and she is young and smart and well educated and enthusiastic and has a great rapport with students. But she is, the first few weeks, she was in tears
Mm.
because she wanted to be in a classroom with kids, elementary kids. Well, guess what? She had to teach, she had to go to the school in the classroom with other teachers, but still teach online
Oh,
and create
wow.
all these things on the board. Well, she didn't have the years of teaching. And
Hmm.
so she had to
Right.
get very creative. And she has a contract. She can't just flat drop out, you know.
Right. Right.
But
That's a good point.
yeah, so it's very testy. And then here's something else I was going to mention too
Hmm.
is, and you probably know about this. There are three. I mean, there's all kinds of forms of learning, of course. And I taught a lot of very high functioning special needs kids, so that was a whole different type of group of students that I was teaching. But basically, all of us, whether we're students or whatever, there is what we call the foundations of learning, and it's broken down in three huge groups. And then from those groups, you continue to break them down. But the three major uh, foundations of learning are kinesthetic, which is your physical learning with your hands.
Right.
Some kids learn that way. And then audio, which is listening,
Hmm.
and then visual. And then some kids are equilateral. They kind of learn from all three levels. But if you have a kid, usually it's boys, that like to learn kinesthetically, those are usually the kids that really into sports because they're physical and they've got to have hands on. They got to be able to. They're tactile people.
Yes. Yeah.
Those are the kids that I was doing some research. They're having the hardest time with adapting to this because what is online learning? It's mostly visual and audio.
Hmm.
So that's very, very challenging. And for a teacher, I just can't imagine me being on the other side of the screen knowing that this one student is a kinesthetic learner and trying to make it real exciting for him without offering something. Like they're the ones that I would probably give an assignment to build a birdhouse and take measurements of everything and then convert them, and then they've got a math lesson plus a physical structure lesson.
Yeah.
We can't do that if we're teaching.
Yeah. 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 That's a great idea.
So, well, I guess you could kind of do it online, but and you know what? In praise of many teachers and parents and students, it has gotten kids, parents, students, teachers to be, to think outside of the box and to be very inventive because
Hmm.
for some people it's really working because they have to get out of that comfort zone.
Absolutely. Absolutely, they do. Let's kind of flip the script a little on the COVID and let's stick with schools, but talk about some of the rural areas that have been significantly less likely to expect teachers to provide instruction during COVID-19 because of no access to Wi-Fi. I know there was actually a few reports, I don't have the exact numbers, but a lot of reports said that there were still thousands of students that were living in rural areas that do not even have access to Wi-Fi. So this isn't a situation of, oh, they can't afford a laptop or, oh, they don't have, access to a computer. The problem is that their towns that they live in physically do not offer Wi-Fi. It's not just that they can't afford Wi-Fi, it's that the towns they live in are so rural and they're so far out that Wi-Fi actually isn't there yet or hasn't stretched that far. This is likely to have a large impact on those students, especially ones that are falling behind. What can we do? Maybe there's something we can do, a solution we can come up with to help these students that have no access to the internet to be able to stay up with their classrooms.
I actually have a term that I've heard, and it's called the COVID slide,
Mm-hmm.
which is where students are they're not literally dropping out by choice, but they're just dropping out because they don't have the infrastructure. And a lot of the parents are like, oh, well, you can catch up later. I've got to work or something. It's not that the parents are not so caring, but they also do not have, technical support because they're not of that nature. Sometimes it's just the way of certain families in rural settings, and you and I both know about that because we know of a particular area, that reflects
Yes.
that.
Yes.
Personally, but when I have seen where, thank God for some well-meaning and actually effective corporations like Google and Microsoft have been giving funds and giving out, they've been targeting certain areas. I believe
Yes.
I recently heard on NPR, Bill Gates' wife, Melissa, I think is her name, Melissa Gates, or Melinda Gates, sorry. She seems to have a sense about that sort of thing. So it's sort of gotten to where, which I think, referring to biblical scripture, too much is given, much is expected. And so there has been just really literally millions of dollars have been put forth to some of these rural areas. Unfortunately, it just, these things take time because they have to be delivered. And then once some of these families and kids do get these, these devices, I actually worked under grant program. You remember that a couple years ago. And, sometimes even once you have these, it's like, oh, wow, we got these devices, let's go to work. Well, they have to learn from scratch because they're not familiar with it,
Yes, that's a great
point. So there is
point.
a learning curve that goes along with that. But it is bringing out the best in many people. And then, folks that have more to offer, they have the experience, they are stepping in. But it's still, you're right, it's still challenging. It's not impossible, but it is very challenging. And yes, there is going to be in the future, some difficulty for these kids to find work because there's going to be a gap in their learning process. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I think read somewhere that some of those students that did not have access to the Wi-Fi were getting sent home with, books, paper materials, workbooks, things of that nature. So hopefully, with the help and support of their parents from home, they'll be able to continue to, keep up with the classroom, even if they're not on the internet. I mean, I know that's not the most efficient way, but like you said, with them even getting a new, internet and a laptop, it's a learning curve. They've got to start from the very beginning on how to do that if they haven't been working on computers already in school and what have you. Let's kind of stay on the same topic of COVID in schools and just kind of roll right along. One of the big topics during COVID and having to do with schools has been about school lunches and the lack of food and nutrition for students. How do we continue to make sure students are being fed during this time? And, one of the things that I kind of wanted to point out and talk about was that a lot of these schools, which we're so thankful for, have decided to implement giving out breakfast and lunch. Even those students are remotely learning. They're learning from home. They're still able to come by school in the morning with family members and pick up their breakfast and their lunch for that day. Something that a lot of people aren't aware of, I actually noticed on social media, a lot of people are blowing straight through these school zones because they're like, oh, there's no school, kids are at home, it's not a big deal. But it's actually law that if you do see the yellow lights flashing, you do have to abide by them because there are students still picking up lunches and breakfasts. And this is so important. I don't know what we would, I don't know what students would do or what they would have to eat if they were not able to have the school provided breakfast and lunch for them. And it's just what I guess I'm trying to say is it shines a light on not only the nutrition and food issue that we have in the schools, but it makes it that much more concrete for you to understand that if these kids don't have school, they don't have food.
That is true. You and I have talked before about my experiences in Title I schools, and for those listeners who are not sure what that is, that's where there is a poverty level that there is more students at a poverty level, 40% and below. This 40% of the students and below is at poverty level, and so Title I schools, they're in every single state, and in some rural counties, of course, the numbers go up. There's no charter schools that are also Title I schools. That just doesn't happen.
Right.
But here's the bottom line: those kids, and I worked in these schools. The parent, and I'm going to say parent because very few of them have two parents in the home, and a lot of times it's grandma or auntie.
That's so true.
But they will, when they register their kids every year, yes, and when they register their kids every year, they want to get that pink form that they can sign so they can get food. And a lot of these parents that I knew were working two jobs, and a lot of these parents that were working two jobs and sometimes more were women.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, we're back down to the food, and so that is like a lifesaver for the kids and the parent, the caregiver, you might say.
Mm-hmm.
And I have seen kids hungry come into school, and it's heartbreaking. So you made a very, very good point. A school provides a home away from home, and now, for the middle and upper middle class families that have some kind of security,
Mm-hmm.
this is already a difficult transition. But for their children, literally aches for them, really does, because I know, because I was there, I've seen it, even in the best of circumstances when COVID didn't even exist, and that's true.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's a lifeline. Sometimes that's the only 2 meals they get, Savannah.
That's absolutely right.
Abby.
Oh yeah.
I know this. I know it. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a very, very important point. Mm-hmm. And our taxes paid for, thank God they are making lunches. Even sack lunches is better than no lunch at all.
Yeah.
But, yeah, we had several of the people I'm aware of. We had breakfast and lunch, and good hot lunch.
Mm-hmm.
Calories,
oh yeah.
Good calories. So,
yeah.
It's really, and it's just crazy is that our country isn't the only country that's going through these difficult challenges. It is worldwide. I mean, this pandemic has set everybody level. Everybody's got regardless of their socioeconomic status, everybody has a story, or they know somebody who has one. So, but of course, having been an educator, it's just really, anytime there's something on the news or something good or bad that happens, I just zero in on that because that was my sweet spot as a career,
Mm-hmm.
But I pray for these kids.
Yeah, definitely. We
get back on track.
Yeah.
There is we talk about PLC, professional learning community. That's sort of like, that's a term that's used in the education world. PLC is like where everybody is taking a part. The community, the libraries, the schools, the students, YMCA, all of that is, professional learning community. And so there's been I just also wanted to add, there's been a breakdown in that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because, because YMCA is closed and the different basketball courts, whatever it is.
Yeah, that's actually,
holistic,
that's actually a good point too, because, if you think about it, what about the after school programs that kids needed to go to after school because their parents weren't off at 3:00 to pick them up, or, extracurricular activities that they can no longer be involved in because of due to COVID-19, or sports programs or piano or dance lessons. things like that. Those are all being, like you said, kind of happening all at once, being taken away or not being accessible to them anymore.
Yes, and different ways to manage that. I know where I am, there's a lot of outdoor, well, it's a richer community, and therefore there's a lot more, outdoor areas where people can get out, parks and skateboard communities and things like that. So, but not all areas have access to that, and that creates a big stress because kids, you know what? This is a personal thing. When kids say, "Oh, he's hyperactive," I'm going to tell. I got to get on my little platform. All kids are going to be hyperactive if you are a slow adult. And if a kid is active, he's healthy.
Right.
Or she's healthy.
Yeah.
They need, it's a beautiful thing when you have a healthy child with lots of energy, but they do need an opportunity to, to run and play. And that's part of their developing their coordination, even their sense of self-awareness and self-confidence and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be one thing I would want to say to parents once they are instructed, when they have that online learning with the teacher. Don't say, "Okay, now you got this, you got your assignment, just sit there and finish it." No, it's time for them to get out and run, or even in the house, maybe put the TV on and do some little aerobics or something. There's so much on television now and so much on, that they can see. Let them get their head and cleared out before they go back and settle down and work online.
Mm-hmm.
3 more things to discuss as we wrap up.
Okay.
Is, which leads me into this last, which is dealing with expectations. That's something else all teachers have had for years with parents. But so crazy, because if you talk to a parent and say, "Well, what were you like when you were in middle school or high school or elementary school?" Because everybody can remember back to when they were at least 8, 9, 10, 11, all the way up through high school.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you have higher expectations for your child than you have had for yourself?
Right.
So parents have a tendency also to expect miracles from the teachers.
Absolutely.
And parents need to bear in mind that teachers are people too. They have families too. They are stressed too, and they have never had to teach this way before either.
Mm-hmm.
It is unrealistic to think that all of a sudden there's going to be this magical energy going between teacher and student online, just instantly, because sometimes the teachers aren't going to be able to fully engage that student. Now, I know with the online learning, only because of that, and I've seen it on TV as well, where they have, and of course I've done Zoom talks when I was working, but you can see maybe 15 students, you know what I'm saying, online, where they have their own little box on Zoom.
Yeah.
And the teacher can literally be teaching all the students, and he or she can see what that student's doing, So there might be 4 or 5 that are fully engaged with the teacher, but there's somebody else that might get up from their chair and go get a Twinkie or something, So even in those circumstances, the teacher has to keep them focused.
Absolutely.
And,
I think the
teachers, so the teachers.
I was just gonna say, I think the parents and the caregivers kind of got a little taste of that teacher medicine, so to speak, and maybe parents will start to cut teachers a bit more of a break from time to time now that they've realized what being a teacher entails to a small extent, because even though they're not taking over a classroom of 20 or 30 kids, they are feeling what it's like to be in a teacher's shoes, to have a family, a life, and be teaching and trying to work at the same time. So hopefully there'll be a little slack cut from now on when it comes from the parents to the teachers.
Yes, and hopefully, in a perfect world, teachers and parents should be both co-teachers for that child.
Mm-hmm.
And once they are working as a team, I mean, I always had better results with my students when the parent was involved. Every single time.
Right.
And this is making, this is really creating more of a union between teachers and parents, even if it's a single parent. I know there's a lot of teachers with children that are single parents too.
Mm-hmm.
And they're, boy, talk about, a challenge. I'm too old to have to take on something like that. But when you do have, some cohesion between the teacher and the parent, you're going to have a much better outcome with your child. So instead of trying to find fault, I'm saying this to some parents, not all parents, like, well, he or she should be teaching this way, or why can't he reach my child, or why is, she doing it this way?
Mm-hmm.
Try to find some common ground with that teacher so that you are working together for your child, because then the child sees that energy too, and when he realizes that there is a good, strong union, he or she put out, and they'll also be more encouraged. All of a sudden, they want to please both people,
Mm-hmm.
So,
absolutely.
Because we started this conversation and this interview just talking about some of the problems that everybody's enduring,
Mm-hmm.
just basically to set a foundation of joining in with everyone and sort of be almost commiserating with the troubles. But I wanted to close it out with, some positive encouragement, and that would be the most important. I know it's a load on the parents, but learn more about what the lesson is that's given to the student, even if it's something that's sort of over your head.
Mm-hmm.
At least familiarize yourself. And sometimes it can be fun. You'll find as a parent, sometimes you get to learn along with that child. It's real.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then the second thing's, absolutely. And the second thing is to form a good bond with the teacher, because that teacher is getting worn out. I promise you. So if you can encourage him or her, and then say, look, is there anything else I can do to help my child? Oh my God, when I would hear as parents say that to me, it's like, yes.
Please. Yeah.
This is a time with COVID that we have to kind of put our frustrations aside and try to really work together, because our kids are our future.
Yes, absolutely. They are. Today's episode of Savvy and Sage Podcast is being brought to you by The Chronicles of Heavenly Jordan by author Summer K. Scott. One of the things that I think is really great about this first book is that it is actually titled #Auschwitz. And as a lot of you may know, there have been a lot of questions coming out from teens to their parents about the sweatshirt of the man that was seen at the Capitol building on the 6th. And this is a great way to discuss that with your students. This actually is a book about Auschwitz in a way, and dealing with a young girl learning about it for the first time. So very, very relevant to what's happening right now. I advise you go pick up this book. It's great for teenagers, young adults. It's also got a book 2, #wait for it. And both of these are available right now. These are on Amazon and Kindle. They're very nice, quick reads, large lettering, great for, like I said, young teens and young adults. So make sure you pick up your copy today, once again on Amazon and Kindle, The Chronicles of Heavenly Jordan book series. Today's featured makeup look is brought to you by Pharmacy Cosmetics. With a wide range of products for health and beauty for women, men, and children, Pharmacy has everything you need and more. Make sure to shop my link in the description box below. Also, I wanted to let you know, I know you can't see me, but I have on my Kamala Harris pearls and my blazer today, so I'm repping for Miss First Lady, Madame.